It was last Saturday morning. I came into the kitchen to prepare breakfast, turn on the radio, and there was a nice song playing, Pharrell Williams, Because I'm Happy. So I had a good mood to start into the weekend. I started to prepare everything, and the news then were on. And the radio announcer started, "We're running out of beans. Germany faces a coffee crisis. Industry fears that prices will significantly increase, and we are threatened with a shortage of supply on the German and European market." Wow, my mind starts running. Very good PR from the coffee lobby. They will talk about the EU deforestation regulation. In how much detail will they go? Which perspective will the media show? More to my personal thoughts later in the presentation. The ones of you who have heard about the EU deforestation regulation know why I started this story. For the other ones, welcome to my talk. I will dive into the EU deforestation regulation, the current challenges, as well as the solutions that we offer as HOBUM. You will understand why it's all about the origin of bio-based materials. I want to inspire you not only to work with bio-based materials, but also to question the origin and their impact on climate change. A big thank you that all of you are here today and take the time to listen to this topic. When we were still hunters and gatherers, we knew exactly where our food is coming from, our tools and our clothes as well. And when we would have killed all deer in our region, we would have known that there will be no food in the future. So we cared about our environment and watched out that it will feed us also in the future. With the industrialization and the supply chain got more and more complex, and we rely on the information that is provided by at the point of sales, when it comes to sourcing, to processing, but also to the way of transport of the materials. So it's not only about the origin, where it comes from, but also the processing and the quality. So we created a system where we did not take into account which consequences the consume of a certain product has for the environment and which impact it has on a global scale. So which responsibility do we have as a consumer? Do we actually have to know everything on the basis of each product that we consume daily? Just as an example, I brought to you the supply chain of soybeans until they arrive at our plant at HOBUM. So it starts with the soybeans that are planted, most probably by a tractor with a seeding machine on an area of land somewhere in the world. It's fertilized, they're probably used pesticides and herbicides to keep the plants healthy. Then a huge harvester will come. It's not like 100 years ago where everybody harvested by hand, but by now the harvesters are more than 9 meters long. Then the beans go into a transport, they are stored, then they are transported again. When they are from overseas, they are transported by ship. Then when they arrive in Europe, they go into a tank again, then transported to an oil mill, and from the oil mill again, transported to HOBUM. So that is a supply chain that I am aware of because we are working with soybean oil. But as a producer, every time that I open a glass with a lid, do I actually think about where does the lid come from? Or at least the sealing of the lid, because some sealings of lids contain soybean oil-based products. And from my point of view, it's way too complex, and we need the government as well as companies to support us as consumers. And that's also why the European Commission started to take on responsibility when it comes to deforestation. Let's stop deforestation altogether as a consumer, as a government, but also as an employee of a company. Between 1990 and 2020, the area that was deforested worldwide due to the consume in Europe was as large, or the area that was deforested was as large as Europe and even a little bigger. And that is a number that was published by the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. And I'm shocked. That's a huge area. And we as consumers, and that's exactly almost the lifespan where I've been living, are responsible for deforestation. And by now we know that it does something when an area that big is not the ecosystem that it was before. So the EU Commission takes responsibility, and also not only for them, but also for us as consumers. And therefore, they introduced the EU Deforestation Regulation. The EU Deforestation Regulation is not only about coffee and soybean, but also about beef, cocoa, and palm oil. The European Union will make sure that all products that are based on those raw materials are deforestation free when they are placed in the European market. The cutoff date, which is applied, is December 31st, 2020. So after that, we are, or when there's a land that was deforested after, we're not allowed to import raw materials from those areas into Europe. This regulation will start to take place by December 30th of this year. And in case that we violate this regulation, the penalty will be as high as 4% of the yearly turnover of the company. But what does it mean for HOBUM? All our products that are based on soybeans are affected, so that the mergenate ESBO as well as the soybean-based mergenols will be deforestation free. We will rely, or we are relying on our suppliers. That is why we comply with the regulation by the end of 2024. I will come to why on the next slide, but first I would like to share how we understand the EUDR. HOBUM, as well as our upstream supply chain, are responsible to submit a due diligence statement where we say who we are, which products we want to place on the European market, and in which quantity. And the most important part is that we clearly say in which country the material was produced, as well as give the geolocation of the plot of land. So really in detail show where does the volume that we sell come from, and not in general, but with respect to each quantity. And the downstream users, so our customers, they have to provide, in case the government controls them, the information, but they do not need to follow up on that and forward it to their customers. But what are the current challenges? I talked about the geolocation, and it's very complex. If you remember the supply chain, in the end, it's an information that is passed on from one part to the other, but it's not like a computer that you where you have an, let's say, ID for the computer and attach the information. It's about a material that is stored in tanks and where it's about volume, and you need to coordinate the information, and that is very challenging at the moment. Another challenge is the IT system, where we are supposed to enter our information and to get a due diligence statement. The regulation states that this system should be established by the end of the year, the same day the regulation takes in place. But that makes it a little complicated. We as HOBUM rely on our suppliers for the reference number of their due diligence statement because we do not have the information. But when the information system is not ready, they can't enter, so we do not have the reference number. We hope that the European Union speeds up, and together with the OVID, a German oil mill association, we ask the European government to support us and all companies that are affected by the regulation to improve and speed up their process so that we are able to rely on the regulation. And that is why it's important to us that we do not have only bad documentation and information on the media about the deforestation regulation. There are challenges for sure, but it's time that we are facing them and together work on them, because we have a responsibility as a consumer. And now I would like to share with you which offers we have. So our material that we will offer, our standard material for the soybean oil-based products, will be deforestation free by the end of this year. We have an even higher standard, which relies on RTRS, a round table on responsible soy. The origin of the beans is worldwide, and the whole supply chain is certified, but it's a mass balance approach. So you do not know which material you actually have at your facility. And for the deforestation-free approach, they categorized areas in South America and said that in category 1, there are highly endangered areas. And if there's material coming from these highly endangered areas, then the cutoff date needs to be before 2009. If the area is endangered or in another of the two categories, then the cutoff date needs to be before 2016. So they differentiate between the areas of which relevance the areas have worldwide. Unfortunately, there's a limited geolocation, so there's only the location available of each farm, but not of each plot of land. But the RTRS also ensures social standards, security standards, and human rights, as well as good agricultural practices. And as an even more regional alternative, we offer the NEO, the new environmental option. There, the soybean oils are sourced in Europe. We have a resilient supply chain that is much shorter, and we can segregate the material. So we know exactly which soybean oil comes from Europe, and we can handle it in our batch process so that you as our customer can receive a material that definitely has European origin. It is deforestation as well as conversion free since 2008. And also this quality ensures security or secures social standards as well as human rights and good agricultural practice. But the USP of the NEO is or can be measured in another currency, which is the product carbon footprint. The product carbon footprint is something that my colleague Jan-Dominik Obers will explain in the next talk, but just for your knowledge, it is the equivalent of CO2, which is produced per kilogram product, and the PCF of the European soybean oil, at least for the marginated ELO, is 4 times lower than the international sourced soybean oil. So I hope that you understood that bio-based materials offer many opportunities to develop sustainable products if the origin is right.